Welcome, dear students. In this session, we would focus on the nature of verbs in Renaissance English period. I hope and expect that by the end of this session, you would have a know-how of the status of verbs during this period. Well, my dear students, a casual reader who reads Elizabethan literature or any text from Elizabethan times would certainly be aware of various differences of usage in the verb that are different and distinct from the modern times. These differences are sometimes so slight that they only give a kind of what you would say a mildly unfamiliar tinge or a slight kind of consciousness on that, but otherwise they do not disturb the understanding of the text. Lennox asks in Macbeth, this is an example of the use of a verb that I have taken from the famous work of Shakespeare, Macbeth. The character Lennox says, "Goes the king hence today?" Goes the king hence today? He says. So this is a question. This is an interrogative form without auxiliary. Actually, he should have said, "Does the king go?" Or, according to the modern English rules, the option could have been, "Is the king leaving today?" But the choice that is made here is without auxiliary. Shakespeare also often uses, is instead of has been. He does not use has been. Many times we would find him using is as a replacement. So here are some examples for you. Is execution done on Carter? The second example is, it's unnatural even like the dead that's done. So, Shakespeare finds it, here it was used, by the way, in this form or used here. So Shakespeare frequently uses is in this way. Here is, by the way, another example of that for you. Impersonal uses of verbs were very common in those times when we compare that to today. Look at this example. It yearns me not, it dislikes me. As a matter of fact, today we do not speak like this. We never use it dislikes me. With the neuter, we do not use it like this. There were certain differences in terms of inflections as well. By the end of 16th century, there were certain forms like tells, gives, says. These forms were predominant and they were predominating, the overall usage of language, though, doth and hath were also being used. So, this was a time of fluctuation. This was a time of flux. A lot of changes were coming in so rapidly, that there were certain things that had not yet been dropped and new things had already been introduced that would replace them gradually later on. But there would be a stage where there would be an overlapping. The new rules, the new things would be used. The old would also be retained to some extent and there would be an overlapping. Notice this text again that is taken from Merchant of Venice, and the text, this red part, has certain examples of this usage. I have already put them in bold for you, by the way. The quality of mercy is not strained, it droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven. Upon the place beneath it is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. So, these uses of droppeth and blesseth, they would go parallel with the uses drops and blesses. So, both the types of, varieties were coexisting. Here, my dear students, on the screen, you would see some more examples where a writer towards the middle of the century observes and says, "Whoever we use to write thus, leadeth it, maketh it, noteth it, wrecketh it, perfumeth it," etc. So, notice these 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 uses. Yet in our ordinary speech, Okay, we understand these, but generally what we use is leads it, makes it, rakes it, perfumes it, and noteth is notes it. So, the shift that has now taken place, and now we do not use these forms that were allowed at that time. It is altogether probable that during Shakespeare's lifetime, this S became the usual ending for this part of the verb in the spoken language, but it was not yet standardized, or it had not taken a firm position. In Middle English, extensive inroads were made in the ranks of the Old English strong verbs. Many of these verbs were lost, and many became weak over the time period. And actually, a lot of fluctuation and alteration in the past tense and past participle happened during the times. All this is reflected in the language of Shakespeare, and not only of Shakespeare, but also of his other contemporaries. Because, language is what people speak, and literature is a mirror of, the language of the times. Verbs, by the way, that developed weak forms were, for example, bide, crow, crowd, flay, mow, dread, sprout, and wade. Also, some strong forms disappeared over the time. A number of weak forms like blowed, growed, shined, shrinked, swinged were in fairly common use, and although these verbs finally remained as strong verbs. Both as the past tense of bite. Now we do not use bite, boat. We use bite, bit, bitten. Likewise, as we, use write, wrote, in the same way in the past it was bite, boat. But now this bite to boat shift has changed over the times. Participle bacon. Now we do not use, but a lot of its examples are found in Bible. Actually, baked is also used there, but less. Overall, I would say in Shakespeare's days, there was much more latitude, much more flexibility, much more freedom in the choice of inflections for verbs when we compare it with today.